safest banks. So as market president, I not only drive and manage much of our commercial loan business, but I also sit on the TD Charitable Foundation Board. Our foundation's area of focus are affordable housing, financial literacy, economic development, and community building. And I'm proud to share some stats. So in 2019, we awarded over $4.4 million in foundation grants just in New Jersey alone. In addition, TD spent an additional $827,000 sponsoring many, many great events like this one throughout our state. And our employees volunteered almost 15,000 hours to local New Jersey organizations. So today, I'm here to provide some comments about the economy. But before I do, I would like to say a few words about this SBA Paycheck Protection Program, as there's still money available through August 8th. At TD, very proud of the fact that we rank number 4 in units and number 6 overall in PPP production across the United States, as we have worked around the clock to get as many of these loans in the hands of our customers to help them survive the financial impact of the pandemic. To date, we have closed over 82,000 loans for $8.5 billion across our footprint, with about 30% of those loans here in New Jersey. The Paycheck Protection Program was rolled out in early April and was designed to keep employees on the payroll records during business slowdown or shutdown. The spirit of the program was great, but it directly conflicted with other programs as many employees made more money collecting unemployment. This was a really big problem for companies who were completely shut down, especially in the ever important leisure and hospitality industries here in New Jersey. So in June, the PPP Flexibility Act was passed. This extended the covered period forgiveness from 8 to 24 weeks, and this gave employers more time to spend the money. It also allowed employers to spend 60% of the funds on payroll and payroll-related expenses and 40% on mortgage interest, rent, and utilities. Originally, this mix was 75% payroll and 25% other expenses. It also extended the payment deferral period from 6 months to 10 months to actually apply for forgiveness. And for any funds that are not forgiven, the balance could be repaid over a 5-year loan at 1% interest versus the 2 years proposed in the original program. All in all, this has been a really great program for many businesses, and most banks will begin accepting forgiveness applications sometime later this summer. And don't forget, this is a real program, and there's still money left if you apply before August 8th. So let's turn to the economy. And this speech would have been far different just 4 months ago, as we had one of the strongest economies in history with record low unemployment. But the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic really upended our nation's economy and labor market in rapid fashion, and New Jersey has certainly been battered. New Jersey is second only to New York in per capita infections, so measures to contain the virus have been relatively very restrictive since March. The pandemic's disruption has been reflected in above average job losses, with payrolls down 18% and a double-digit unemployment rate. With new infections slowing down, New Jersey is slowly reopening and economic activity has begun to pick up. That said, the recovery will not be a speedy process. Economic growth in New Jersey is forecast to contract 5.3% for 2020, which will worsen our state's already weak fiscal position. TD Economics is forecasting a slight rebound in 2021, near 3%, but still below average. New Jersey is projecting a $10 billion budget hole through fiscal 2021 due to COVID. So steep spending cuts and the possible furloughing of tens of thousands of public workers lie in the balance. A recently passed bill to borrow the $10 billion budget gap will help in the short run, but we will be paying for it for decades. While job losses have been broad-based, the leisure and hospitality sector has borne the brunt of the impact. With all 9 of Atlantic City's casinos shut down for months and now just slowly reopening, gambling revenue has taken a massive hit. The hit to jobs and income will weigh on the housing sector as sales have dropped sharply, down 20% year over year back in April. However, speaking with several local realtors, the very low interest rate environment and fear in our largest cities of New York and Philadelphia are creating a recent surge in sales activity here in South Jersey. So let's hope that continues. New Jersey has one of the highest shares of undocumented immigrants in the U.S. who are receiving little to no financial assistance during COVID-19. Unfortunately, this has a negative impact on consumer spending in our state across all industries and adds to the drag on our local economy and slows our recovery relative to other states. Still, some sectors in New Jersey are expected to remain solid. This includes healthcare and logistics. The healthcare sector, while faring relatively better, has not been spared from job losses, but the recovery here will be very quick as the industry will begin to operate at full capacity as the pandemic concern eases. Our state's large pharmaceutical industry may also lend a hand to our recovery, with many firms poised to benefit from work directly related to the battle against COVID-19. As for logistics, falling global trade has weighed on current activity, but the industry has clearly benefited from the significant expansion of online shopping during the pandemic. So in conclusion, dark clouds will continue for our state and national economy until we have a solution to COVID-19 and we can reopen our state and our country at full capacity. But on a positive note, New Jersey does possess a very skilled workforce, excellent educational institutions, proximity to major urban centers, and relatively affordable housing. We need to figure out how to leverage these positive attributes to help in our recovery. That concludes my remarks. Thank you for being here today. Be safe and enjoy the rest of the program.
Chaz?
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, Rob Curley. Rob Curley has opened this program since I can remember. He's been intricately involved in construction forecast, and his remarks are always, his analytical remarks are always on point, and have helped us through the upcoming years. And now probably more so than ever. So thank you, Rob, for your insight. And now I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Charles Caramana. I am with Greyhawk. I am a principal with Greyhawk, and we are a CMN consulting firm. Greyhawk has been a member of the Southern New Jersey Development Council since I can remember, I think the last 15 years or so, and we've been actively involved in the construction forecast program. We are once again a supporting sponsor, and my role here today is to introduce Lauren Moore. So, without any further pontification on my part, here's Mr. Lauren Moore. Lauren Moore is the executive director of the Atlantic County Economic Alliance, where he is responsible for economic development efforts in the Atlantic County region. Lauren has over 30 years of professional experience holding numerous management and economic development positions in government through that time. He served as the executive director of the New Jersey Business Action Center and as director of the Business Retention and Attraction at the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. So without any more from me, I'm going to turn things over to Lauren, and we look forward to his presentation.
Are we ready to go, Jane?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity, Jane, to address the audience on some exciting things that are going on in Atlantic County. My remarks are going to largely focus on our aviation assets. You can go to the next slide, please. I'm also going to speak about some medical facilities. It was interesting to hear about the resurgence of logistics and healthcare facilities, because I'm going to speak, about logistics. Of course, aviation is a part of the logistics industry, and we have some medical facilities that are starting to rise in Atlantic County. I'm going to speak about some Atlantic City projects, some county infrastructure projects, and then, of course, and I was glad to see Brian Sabina earlier. He's been the heart and soul at EDA on the offshore wind effort for the state of New Jersey. We have 2 offshore wind companies headquartered in Atlantic City, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So, moving forward here on the aviation side, you can go to the next slide, please. We have an economic development strategy that we put together in Atlantic County, and our economic development strategy focuses on several core industry clusters. The first cluster that we're focused on is aviation, and you'll see from this slide why we're focused on aviation. I'm not going to go through each bullet point. I'm going to move through these relatively quickly, but we have some very, very strong aviation assets in Atlantic County. namely the FAA Tech Center with 5,000 federal and private sector jobs and the Atlantic City Airport. Each of these pictures here you're going to see again in a minute. You can go to the next slide, please. Okay, this gives you an overview of what we're focused on in our aviation sector here. This is called our Aviation Innovation Hub. This is inside the donut hole is the Tech Center, the FAA Technical Center, William J. Hughes Technical Center, and the Atlantic City International Airport. Everything in green is 1 mile off the boundary. This is our designated Aviation Innovation Hub. And I'm going to talk about, the NARTP. It's the National Aviation Technical Park, which is at the bottom of the screen. One thing to note on this slide is you'll see the colored areas, orange and green. This is where we're targeting for cargo facilities and aviation maintenance repair and an aviation maintenance repair technical training academy. And I'm going to talk about those. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, we have constructed our first building. You'll see the site plan here, right at the airport circle. This is our Aviation Tech Center, Research and Development Facility. 58 acres that has been provided to us by the Tech Center. The FAA is our partner. We have created 300 technical jobs in our first 66,000 square foot building. First building was about 22 million. Here. And you'll see on the site plan, we have 7 buildings planned over 400,000 square feet. I'm going to talk more about the second and third buildings because we have very, very strong interest from the aviation research community on the second and third building. Please go to the next slide. Okay, in the first building, and I'm not going to go through each of these, you'll see here's the list of our 9 tenants. And I will tell you, we're working on another major tenant to come into the last 2,500 square feet that we have in the building here. But you'll see General Dynamics, Thunderbolt. We have some very, very strong. General Dynamics is one of the biggest defense contractors in the world. They're one of our anchor tenants. A picture of the buildings in the lower left corner, here. We had the groundbreaking about a year ago on the building. You can go to the next slide, please. Okay, listen, we worked hard, like, my colleagues in the other counties on our partners. We have a wide variety of partners that we've worked hard on, both strategic partners and academic. You can go to the next slide, please. Okay, one of the things that's very important to note that's helping us build and construct infrastructure around the airport is the Airport of the Future. We were successful in getting a $1.7 million grant from the U.S. Economic Development Authority to build the Airport of the Future. I'm not going to go into a lot on this. If anybody has any questions downstream, I'm glad to talk about it. But we're getting very, very good at getting grants. You can go to the next slide, please. And by the way, just real quick on that last slide, we are one of the first incubator accelerators. The last point on that slide, this is important to note on workforce development and small business development. And I can't thank Brian Sabina and Jonathan Kennedy from the New Jersey Economic Development Authority enough for their support. But we were one of the first incubators and accelerators in South Jersey to support STEM and research and development at our aviation tech park. Next slide, please. This is just a fun slide, right? And so you'll see the Jetsons, for those of us that grew up in that generation, here. But what you're looking at, right, in the red is called it's called a urban air system that is an air jitney. So it's vertical takeoff, battery operated. What we're proposing here, working with our partners at the FAA, is to actually fly in a vertical takeoff aircraft and stop at all the casinos in an air jitney. This is something that we're working with, 2 NASA bases on with this. And we've actually been out working on this. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, we're going to build a maintenance academy. This is in the planning. Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University is our partner. Go to the next slide, please. So I'm looking at my timer, and we're getting up on 8 minutes. There's an elevation of what the building's going to look like. We're hopeful that this will be under construction sometime next year. Next slide, please. Okay, we're working with the Joint Base. That's what's important to note about this slide because integrating veterans into our workforce and our aviation sector, very important to us. Next slide, please. Global X, you might have read about this. We just signed them to come in, a new airline that's coming in to do maintenance and repair and airline service at Atlantic City Airport. So the charter service industry, while the rest of the airline service and commercial service is taking a hit, charter service is exploding. We just signed them for a 25,000 square foot hangar, $5 million project. It's going to start construction by the end of the year. That's what our hope is. If not, the second Q of next slide, please. Okay, this real quickly here. What I want to point out at the bottom is we have a airport hotel that we're expecting is going to break ground late summer, early fall. It's right outside the fence of the airport at the corner of Delilah and Westcote Road. They're working on their financing package and they're very close to breaking ground on this. One of the other things that's important to note, we've been lobbying the state very heavily for some additional improvements at the airport supported by the toll increases on the expressway. Next slide, please. Medical facilities. Good. We're getting near the end, Jane. So Atlantic Care, I think everybody has seen this. Atlantic Care is planning an almost $40 million expansion in Atlantic City. You'll see that the groundbreaking end of summer this year, and also a traumatic brain injury facility in Egg Harbor Township that Max Flusher on my staff has been working on. One more slide, please. Okay, in Atlantic City, I've been working with Bart Blatstein at Showboat, $100 million water park. And there's some other improvements here that I think everybody's going to get the slides you can take a look at. But there's a lot going on in Atlantic City. Next slide.
Holy shit.
Okay, bridge repair. These are all the county infrastructure projects. I'm not going to go into this. And one more slide and we're done. Offshore wind, very important, okay? This is something we're going to hear more from Brian about, but the two companies are headquartered in Atlantic City. Atlantic Shores just signed a lease to go in Stockton University on the boardwalk, and they're going to have an interactive section to teach the public about the importance of alternative energy and clean energy generation. That's all I have, Jane. Sorry I went over 1 minute and 15.
Thanks. Now we have Matt Kearney, who's going to introduce our next speaker.
All right,
Matt?
Great presentation, Lauren. I love the passion. I love hearing about the innovation coming to Southern New Jersey. We appreciate hearing of the progress Atlantic County is making in diversifying its economy. Particularly impressive plans for utilizing the Atlantic City Airport and in developing a true airport of the future. You definitely get bonus points for the Jetsons and diving horse reference. You snuck into your slides there. All right, so my name is Matthew Kearney. I'm a regional manager for French and Perillo Associates. I manage our Camden City office located in the big, colorful DRPA building on the waterfront in Camden. For those of you who aren't familiar with French and Perillo or maybe all the services we provide, we're a multidiscipline engineering and environmental services firm. We provide all civil engineering design service, transportation, bridge, dam, site development, but we also specialize in geotechnical engineering, structural engineering, construction management, landscape architecture, surveying, environmental, MEP, landfill, GIS, and permitting services as well. All right, for the main reason I'm here, rather than promoting my company, is to introduce you to our next speaker. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to introduce someone many of us has worked with, Mike Haggerty. He is the Director of Project Management for the Camden County Improvement Authority, and he's also the owner of the most beautiful golf swing that I've ever seen. Mike has 40 years of experience in construction management services and is responsible for overseeing and managing planning, design engineering, construction, and operations maintenance of various facilities and infrastructure projects in and around Camden County. Mike, it's great to see you. It's all yours.
Thank you, Matt. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully everybody's doing well in these difficult times. First off, I'd like to thank Marlene and Jane Aselda and the entire Southern New Jersey Development Council team for extending me the invitation to speak today. and talk a little bit about what's happening in Camden County and the upcoming projects. I wish we were under different circumstances and have a chance to see everybody in person. Enjoy it so much. It's a great event. But I give the Southern New Jersey Development Council team and those involved in the planning of this event of putting in the work to put it on today in a virtual format. Also want to thank Matt Kearney. Not only is he for the introduction, not only is he an excellent professional engineer, and as he said, he's a much better golfer than I am, and has a much better swing. But he's a great person. So thanks for the introduction, Matt. Next slide. So today I want to talk a little bit about our overall theme. Listened to Rob's message. Obviously, it's truthful, impactful, and I'm going to try to bring a little bit of optimism in the Camden County world to the table here today. I want to talk a little bit about in the Camden County our response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and then talk a little bit about some projects we have in various stages of development. And then finally, I want to address an important issue to us, which is partnerships with the local municipalities. Next slide, please. So in an overview from the COVID-19 response in the county, I want to say that, what it has shown to me and many of my colleagues is the fact that it's reaffirmed that the county not only has, many skilled and capable employees, but also many great individuals. People have stepped beyond their traditional roles and have stepped into new positions and rolled up their sleeves and accomplished a lot of things in very difficult times. So next slide, please. So a couple of the things that sort of have been going on is recently partnered with local healthcare providers to establish testing sites, the distribution of over 200,000 meals to those in need, and providing it in a dignified manner by, driving up and loading food into the car and into their cars, and then, just, outreach. And I think I look at what's happened at this time, and really, in this crisis, it's provided some opportunities, and the opportunities are really for each of us to think outside the box in what we traditionally do and how we deliver those services. So I think the overriding approach, if you look at care to the residents, providing care to the residents, and meeting their needs, and engaging, connecting with the community, and then adding innovative approaches to problems. And I think all those things have allowed us to respond as timely as we can to those needs, and then to continue to lay plans for the future. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about just a couple highlighted projects. I'm going to start off with a few facility projects that I just want to touch on. Next slide, please. So the first is a new county facility being planned in the borough of Stratford. The project is a redevelopment of an old Bradley's department store. And for those that are unfamiliar with the site, it's located on the White Horse Pike. The Bradley's has been vacant for roughly 25 years. And there's Brandywine Financial Management has got control of the site right now, and have just recently established a Dollar General. There's plans for Royal Farms. And the county's approach, it's Central County, is to completely renovate, rehabilitate the building, literally bringing everything down to the steel. It's a 120,000 square foot building, 9.3 acres, landscape, signage, and the idea in this project and a lot of projects is how to make 1 and 1 a 3, how to, how to push, what we ultimately, have as our needs and help contribute that to the over redevelopment of a given area. And we think, strongly, my colleagues and I, that this project can help revitalize this area in the borough. Next slide, please. Another project I want to touch on is a new joint services facility planned on Mount Ephraim Avenue in Camden. And this site, the county owns the site. It's a 22-acre site. We've done some renovations there, have relocated some groups out of there to swing space site. And the idea behind this is to propose, at least from a phase 1, new office complex for, county, state affiliated offices. And we've worked with the, state offices in other projects and found that the relationships, beneficial and fruitful in terms of, how to, provide the needs. The challenge of this project right now and moving forward is, these times have created uncertainties, and the uncertainty from, colleagues at the state is, the old model of what an office looks like and how it functions, they're not sure that works anymore. Before in the past, they were confident that, what a DMV would look like because they've done 65 of them before, or what a unemployment facility would look like. And in this case, I think it's, because of that uncertainty, there's an ability to, I guess, rethink this whole model. And so that's, what's happening on this site right now, but looking at, long-term of, continuing to build on the relationship we established with the state. Next slide, please.
Keep going. Yeah.
So we're going to talk briefly on some projects in the development stage and, early design stage. Next slide. I put this up just to show a little bit about, the trend in terms of spending for the transportation improvements in Camden City. And I think a lot of this, I think I give a lot of credit to, my colleagues, the county engineer, Kevin Bessica, the elected officials, administration, because the county philosophy has been not just to rely on, DOT funding, but to use other funding sources where they can. So federal funds, the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank funding, whatever, to sort of help improve those, the funding. So I think that'll be a theme that we'll continue to look at in the future. Next slide, please. So one of the exciting projects just want to touch on briefly is a pedestrian walkway over Cooper Point. If those that aren't familiar with it, it's right by the Ben Franklin Bridge, and the idea behind this is to provide a swing bridge, a cantilever swing bridge that would connect the north and south areas under the Ben Franklin Bridge. So this would provide better linkage in the overall walkway at the waterfront. We've submitted grant for design funding. Permitting obviously is going to be extensive in this, given that you're on the waterfront, and we expect the design contract RFP to go out in late 2020. Next slide, please. So here's just a couple renderings of what that looks like. Next slide. Next slide. Another project is the Haddon Avenue corridor, and this is a piece of it from Euclid Avenue to Newton Avenue. The idea behind this is that, can everybody hear me? There's some background. This is an area that the county is interested in moving forward to help spur redevelopment in this area. So this is being funded under the county cap. There actually is a second bond reading of this coming up in August and September, and we expect the RFP for design services to follow immediately after that. Next slide, please. So obviously there's a number of projects here we had for, upcoming projects. I've touched on 6 of them without going into, any in particular. The important part I want to bring up is that most of these projects will result in design opportunities in in the fall 2020 all the way through 2021. So they're all projects to keep an eye on. The last project, the Chew Road from Pesselton Road to Atlantic County border and Waterford Township. This is an example of, it's probably a 2021 design project, but the county's requested funding from the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank, to fund this project, which, provides for rural road funding. So it's an example of sort of, I guess, looking at all funding sources and how to proceed. Next slide, please. Projects in design. Next slide, please. So a number of these next projects are projects in design of which there'll be opportunities for construction management and construction, in the next, several months, all going up to next year. So the Market and Federal Street traffic is under design. The design contract's been awarded, and I'd expect later on this year the RFP will go out for construction management services. Next slide, please. Route 30 feeder from Admiral Wilson Boulevard to Ben Franklin Bridge. This is really looking at changing the routes and the access points around Seagrove. So it's in concept development. We're working with the DOT for approvals. DOT approvals probably expected in spring 2021, and then we'll go out to a design RFP. Next slide, please. These are projects listed in, they're in design, many in the early design stage, but they're all projects that I would expect construction management and/or construction opportunities to develop later in 2020 and into 2021, and many of these it's got various complexities, but the important part is that it's working with municipalities to take care of things. Next slide, please. So as I said, an important part of what we do is in our philosophy has been working with municipalities in terms of a partnership. And the rendering that you see is the project's going on in the borough of Collingswood right now for a new public safety building, about 30,000 square feet of size, where, we're working in collaboration with, the borough and their team, the mayor, the commissioners, the administration, fire department, police department, really to help them realize their vision and work in collaboration with them. And our approach, in working with the municipalities is always tell people, we're a soft sell. We will do as little or as much as required, with the end result being we want to see projects happen. Next slide, please. So I just want to I want to thank everybody for listening today and supporting Southern New Jersey Development Council, and I'll turn it over, I guess, to Bill Carter.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate the preview of the projects that Camden County has under development and design. And as somebody in the transportation industry, I'm particularly interested in those infrastructure projects. On a side note, I think I got to get together with you and Matt and get out on the golf course. Maybe you guys can teach this old hacker some new tricks. So maybe we can get that set up soon. Good morning, everybody. My name is Bill Carter, and I'm with Greenman Peterson. We're a engineering design and construction management firm, and we're happy to be one of your sponsors for today's event. It's my pleasure to welcome back Mr. Jerry Velasquez to our annual construction forecast. Jerry is the president and CEO of the Cumberland County Improvement Authority, where he leads the Improvement Authority's development and redevelopment initiatives, as well as all aspects of its landfill operations. Jerry is responsible for the organization's financial management, project coordination, personnel, daily operations, and oversight, as well as leading the overall economic development strategy for Cumberland County. Thanks for joining us again, Jerry, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the opportunity, and good to be here. I'll run through the slides and obviously talk a lot about what's going to happen in the future, a little bit about COVID, and talk about our 2020-2030 plan and how that relates to projects that are coming up. Next slide, please. This slide is just an overview of the things that we do. For those of you who are not aware, as was mentioned, we have the landfill operation. We have over 30 shared services, do fleet maintenance for the entire county. We are the county's economic development and also redevelopment arm. Next slide. So over the last 5 years, we've developed about 27 public facilities and renovation projects, about $338 million in project costs, 3,800 construction jobs, 580 new full-time jobs, and a $702 million impact, $702 million impact on our economy. So part of what we wanted to do when I came on board was to make strategic investments and drive private investment. So a lot of those investments that we're seeing now are doing exactly what we wanted to do, particularly in our downtown areas. Next slide. This is a summary of the projects. So as you can see, the amount and then the total impact that it's had on our economy. Next slide. This is a summary of our shared services. Our annual contributions to both the county and our host benefit community, Deerfield, our cash contributions. The other savings are savings that are a function of our shared services. So we directly contribute more than $3.5 million to our county on an annual basis. Next slide. One of the things that we did during COVID, there are a couple questions that came up with respect to COVID and the impact that COVID is having on the economy. We certainly have not been hit as hard as Atlantic and Cape May with regard to job loss, but obviously it has had a big impact on our economy. We were lucky. A lot of our businesses here are food production, food manufacturing, so they actually ramped up production to support the activities during COVID. So that was good for us. We obviously are having some issues with respect to finding labor with regard to what's happening with unemployment and the issues associated with folks getting their unemployment benefits and then dealing with the additional unemployment benefits that people were getting. So it's been a hodgepodge of different things that are happening here in the county, but not as bad as our other folks who take a lot of time and have a lot of reliance on retail and tourism. We actually had a weekly meeting. We started out our weekly meeting anticipating we'd have 5 or 6. We had our 16th weekly meeting last Thursday. So it's a weekly reminder that COVID is here and unfortunately will continue with us for a little while. Next slide. These are some of the current projects that we're working on. Lincoln Avenue redevelopment, a project that we teamed up with the city of Vineland, purchased 300 acres, sold a large portion of those acres to a local developer who is currently developing the site, has already built more than 300,000 square feet of manufacturing space and has another 300,000 to go. Top left-hand corner is our food specialization project. That is a commercialization center for food manufacturing entities. The concept there was that they would grow from innovation to commercialization. Unfortunately, with COVID, that's put a little damper on us finding tenants. Construction progresses. We expect to be done in fall, and hopefully we can start to attract some tenants there. We do have one tenant, a small local tenant, who will be locating there upon completion. Top middle is the expansion of our tech school of health science and medicine. That's under construction. Footings and foundations are in. And on the top right is a data center project, which I'll talk more about later. Next slide. Opportunity zones. I know that Lauren mentioned the opportunity zone for his projects. We have 3 opportunity zones in Cumberland County. I think that we'll make better use of opportunity zones. I think folks were trying to get comfortable and understand better the dynamic of opportunity zones and how they can help. Hopefully after COVID, folks can figure out how they can better utilize their resources and their money to invest in projects that we have. are there in the downtown districts of Millville, Vineland, and Bridgeton, also in federal empowerment zones, as well as our urban enterprise zones. So there are a lot of opportunities for investment and bundling of incentives in our opportunity zones here in Cumberland County. Next slide. Our 2020-2030 plan is underway. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. You've heard everyone before me talk about innovation, doing things differently, connections to communities that don't currently exist, a lot of innovation with regard to transportation. Technology is a big deal, certainly has been highlighted by COVID. Broadband and fiber is a big issue for us in our rural areas of Cumberland County. So we are putting together a significant fiber and broadband program that will connect our smaller communities in our rural areas in Cumberland County. So that's something that has highlighted the need to expand our advanced manufacturing as well as our technology efforts here in our county. Next slide. Thinking differently about our future, obviously, those of you who are not aware, Rowan College of South Jersey, the Rowan Gloucester merged with Rowan Cumberland. We have Rowan College of South Jersey now, the Cumberland campus. We just completed, we're calling the Mill Building, which is a science and technology center that has 3D printing as well as drone technology. We're also, as I mentioned before, increasing our food manufacturing, advanced manufacturing in the food areas. A lot of what's happening now, and I think will be highlighted with regard to COVID, and will be a stronger need based on manufacturing and the issues related to employment, workforce, and the impacts of that workforce as a result of COVID will require businesses to seek out advanced manufacturing solutions where maybe they didn't before. So that's going to be a big push for us here in Cumberland to tie our labor force with the advanced manufacturing that's going to be implemented, we believe, over the next several months. Next slide. So for us in Cumberland County, we have several projects that we're working on going forward. We've been working in concert with Salem and Cape May with projects in Wildwood and in Salem City. So there'll be projects that we're working on there. The Millville Library is going to be renovated. We have a couple solar arrays that we're working on here in Cumberland County, very large, 30 megawatt and a 40 megawatt. We have a couple fire stations that we're working on, similar to what the other communities are doing. Improvement authorities developing, owning, and then leasing back the facilities to the local municipalities. We have a $5 million infrastructure project that's being implemented at the landfill, and we're also working with the city of Vineland on a significant redevelopment project that will tie in several different partners and tie in several projects that we're working on. So there is a lot going on in Cumberland. We are working on a lot of different projects and really working towards figuring out how we can implement new ideas, new technology, connectivity, and the advanced manufacturing to develop new opportunities for our residents and our businesses here in Cumberland. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Todd.
Great information, Jerry. We appreciate hearing about Cumberland's strategic planning, and we're always interested in sharing on future development. Every year you bring insight on opportunities to work in Cumberland County. Thank you. My name is Todd Ferrelli with Sheet Metal Workers Local 19. We're thrilled to be sponsors here, and what we do is we're a regional local union, and we partner with nearly 200 contractors and provide a highly skilled, safe labor force. Our trade is a very diverse trade, ranging from fabrication and installation of ductwork, architectural metal, and miscellaneous metals.
Yes.
commercial, signage,
Hey, Bob, how you
commercial
doing?
kitchen equipment. We also represent
Sure.
workers who produce various consumer products. We've been representing workers since 1887 and continue to grow each year. So we may provide more opportunities to workers
Actually,
and
we've done a
contractors
couple of
throughout our
callbacks.
territory.
I think there was one at Country Lace.
Our last presentation is Brian Sabina, Senior Vice President of Economic Transformation for the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Brian oversees the authority's efforts to deliver on Governor Murphy's innovation economy agenda, including developing and running programs that accelerate growth in the state's strategic sectors, among them offshore wind. Prior to joining the EEA, Brian worked at McKinsey & Company, where he was a leader of the firm's public sector and infrastructure practices, where he focused largely on designing and implementing economic development and public sector operations transformations. Here in South Jersey, we're excited by the Wind Port project. We appreciate you joining us this morning and telling us more about it.
Well, thank you very much, Todd. Really appreciate that warm welcome. It looks like our team gave you a mouthful in that introduction. Yeah, thank you also to the whole Southern New Jersey Development Council team, Jane, Marlene. Really appreciate you creating an opportunity for us to talk about the wind port, and I am really excited to be kind of the caboose of this train, but what we heard from Rob and Lauren and Mike and Jerry is just incredibly exciting. I know that there's a number of projects that we at the State Economic Development Authority are really excited to be working in partnership with those counties on. So without further ado, many of you have probably heard, we are, from the governor on down within the state and kind of into the legislature, all in on offshore wind. We think this is a phenomenal opportunity. And one of the key components of delivering on this called once in a generation opportunity is delivering on port infrastructure. So about a month ago, a little bit more than that, we announced formally that our intent to develop the New Jersey Wind Port project in Lower Eloise Creek. So we'll talk a little bit about that today, and then hopefully it won't go too long and we can get to some questions. If you don't mind going to the next slide. I'd like to just frame this opportunity for folks. When we talk about what can offshore wind mean for New Jersey and for the East Coast, we look across the entire pipeline of projects that states from Maine down to Virginia have committed to, and it's approaching a 30 gigawatt commitment pipeline. It's growing seemingly every month, which is exciting. And if you kind of translate that into what does that mean in terms of capital investment across the East Coast, we total this to something in the range of around $100 billion over the next 15 years. And our goal, within the Economic Development Authority is really working to think about how do we capture more than our fair share of value in a set of strategic sectors, and offshore wind is one of those sectors. So this offshore wind project really fits into that approach. So what is the port? You go to the next slide. It is the first purpose-built U.S. wind port. It really is. If you know much about the wind industry, I think you'll be kind of awed by the size of the components. You'll see some towers that have been constructed on land in this picture. Those towers are over 500 feet tall, and they are built kind of at one of these marshaling ports, and then they're put on a specialized installation vessel, and they're brought out to an installation site, the wind farm site in the federal waters vertically. That is just a tremendous new challenge for the U.S. We've looked up and down the East Coast, and there's really only a handful of places that can support that type of operation. So we realizing that this sort of infrastructure is going to be important to capture construction jobs and manufacturing jobs here in New Jersey. We went about a process to try to figure out where could we locate a facility like this. It turns out that we in the state have a phenomenal, as my boss, our CEO, likes to say, kind of a unicorn of a location on Artificial Island in Lower Eloise Creek. The site is just north of the PSE&G Hope Creek Nuclear Power generating station. And it provides us an opportunity to build around a 200-acre marshaling and manufacturing offshore wind port without any sort of height restrictions. So the port is 100% outside of bridges. In this picture, you'll kind of see that there's a couple of different parts of the port. There's what we call a marshaling area. That's where if you're going to build an offshore wind project out in the federal waters, you need to import those parts. You need to stage them all in one place. You need to kind of assemble them, get ready to load them out, and then you need to bring them out into the federal waters. So that's part of what this port will do. And then if you can imagine, given the size of these components, moving them around is quite difficult on anything other than water. So the ability to co-locate manufacturing of these components is quite exciting. And this site with 200 plus acres allows us to lay out a vision to do just that. If you could go to the next slide. What does this mean in terms of kind of metrics? It's a $300 to $400 million green infrastructure investment in South Jersey. We've looked back and that's really one of the largest investments in Salem County in the last 50 years or so. So this is a once in a few generations type of investment that can really help position Salem County and really South Jersey more broadly as a hub for the offshore wind industry. We expect that at full build out, this project will create around 1,500 permanent jobs. Around 200 or so, give or take, will be in more of the assembly operations, kind of managing the marshaling ports, and then another 1,200 or so in support of manufacturing. So building the blades, the nacelles, which are kind of the power plants of the offshore wind turbines, the towers for the plants that are built not only just here in New Jersey, but also those manufacturing jobs can supply projects in New York and Maryland and all up and down the East Coast. Of course, to build this asset, it's anytime you're talking kind of $400 million, that's a lot of construction jobs. We see hundreds of construction jobs targeted to start as early as 2021, and at full build out, looking at around $500 million worth of new economic activity for Salem County and the region and the state. So really is an exciting opportunity for industry that just doesn't really exist here in the and this type of industry doesn't really exist right currently on the East Coast, right? This is a lot more akin to some of the work that happens in oil and gas that happen down in the Gulf. To build that up here in New Jersey is really exciting. If you go to the next slide, please. A little bit of a lot of folks will ask, well, heck, does the state's commitment to this new wind port in Lower Eloise Creek mean that, what does that mean for places like Atlantic City, Cape May, for Paulsboro? We actually think it is 100% complementary and additive. There are different types of ports, right, that the offshore wind industry will need. There's what we call operations and maintenance ports, places where crew will get on a vessel and go out to the wind farms. Those ports need to be as close as possible to the wind farms, and that's where places like Cape May and Atlantic City will really have a strong value proposition. We're already seeing that play out. Of course, there's also going to be opportunities to have ports where we do manufacturing that doesn't need to be assembled vertically, but it needs to have really heavy lift infrastructure. And a port like Paulsboro continues to shine in this area. Obviously, it was highlighted in some of the BPU's first solicitation bids. It continues to be a site of extreme interest for offshore wind. EEW, a German manufacturer, is looking very closely at that site about building a monopile factory there. So that site is quite interesting, exciting. But there are other needs that for those components that can't go underneath bridges, and Lower Eloise Creek will fill that void. It means that New Jersey as a whole has a very competitive value proposition and really a network of ports that can support this industry. If you can go to the next slide, that's great. We talked about this. Open access to the Atlantic is a huge deal. No bridge access, no bridge restrictions, plenty of space. But of course, the strong technical and trades workforce that we know South Jersey possesses. It is kind of a hallmark of the South Jersey economy, is something that is incredibly exciting to our future tenants as we talked about them. You can go to the next slide. A little bit about how we're thinking about developing it. This is an aerial of the site. You can see the nuclear generation station down at the bottom of the site. You kind of see three colors. The blue colors, the dark blue is dredging work that we're going to be doing. That's about 4/5 of a mile dredge from the main Delaware River channel to this site. And then the light blue is what we'll call kind of phase one of the project. And that includes a heavy lift quayside, 30 acres of marshaling capacity, kind of at the bottom corner of that L you'll see at the top of the page. And then an additional 25 acres of ideally manufacturing space a little bit further upland in the site, and then a heavy lift corridor to get between the two. So that's phase one. We are targeting, to launch construction of that in early to mid 2021, with completion around 2023. Phase two of the project is kind of all of the areas in yellow. That is really targeted at expanded marshaling support, as well as really a lot of the manufacturing area. That is targeted to start construction in and around 2023, and then come online in phases from 2024 through 2026. I know we're short on time, so we might be able to skip through a few of the next slides. Let me skip through that, skip through this. Yeah, we'll pause here for just a second. A little bit about our commitments as we look to build this project. We are, as a government entity and kind of as a good corporate citizen, we are fully committed to constructing the project using union labor and using a project labor agreement. I'm sure that will continue on through the maintenance of the ports, right? We have 5-6 years of development and then a long life for this port. We're also committed to setting a new standard in terms of minority and women-owned business inclusion. And I will say that that's both in terms of subcontractors and contractors and kind of the business side of inclusion, as well as looking at to lead from the front in terms of workforce inclusion, in terms of diversity. Offshore wind, and I will say, beg to say construction, it has not always been known to be the most diverse industry. Certainly offshore wind construction has not been. And we look to really reshape that narrative as we bring the industry here to the US and here to New Jersey. Of course, it doesn't make a lot of sense to build a clean energy port if you're not going to do so in an environmentally responsible way. So, we are committed to meeting all the obligations of the new NJ Pact regulations that the NJDEP has put out, as well as pushing to be one of the greenest ports in the country. Finally, for those of you who've been following at home how offshore wind ports have been developing across the U.S., there's a number of different models out there. We're fairly firm that we want our port to be what we call a neutral asset. So any developer can use that project, and projects from other states can potentially use our asset as well. The reason for this is, one, we want there to be competition in the energy marketplace to keep rates low for ratepayers. I think we all appreciate that. And two, we want a steady pipeline of projects, and we want to make sure that we're keeping the heartbeat of those jobs going in Salem County and in the state. So we think this is really the best strategy. So I know we're basically out of time now. I'm going to pause here. Happy to hand it back to Jane, and we can see where we go. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you, everybody. We are running a few minutes late, but for those of you who need to jump, thank you for joining us. We do have a few questions, and we'll move into our Q&A portion. For those of you wishing to stay, there were a couple of questions that have come up, and a couple that were posed prior to the start of the event. The first was, there was a question for Rob Curley. What sectors of the local South Jersey economy are still hot or robust?
Anything that is open. So we're actually really busy on the financing front. We're doing a lot of deals, and surprisingly, a lot of deals are getting done, especially in the commercial real estate market. we have quite a robust pipeline, pretty much in every county of properties being bought and sold in the commercial real estate market, affordable housing, mixed use and that kind of thing. A lot of warehouse and industrial. And on the commercial side, any business that is open and providing services during this time, like grocery stores, for example, anything in the food services business, as Jerry mentioned. So we're definitely seeing good positive activity, in several segments.
Thanks, Rob. This question has just come in for Brian. What is the best way for a minority business-owned, woman business-owned firm to get involved with the Windport project? I know your last bullet on your slide had touched on the new standards for minority and women and business-owned, minority and women business-owned businesses. I am sorry. Just tell us a little bit more.
I got the question. No worries. So we are, for those of you who are in the construction industry, you're probably sharpening your pencils and saying, how the heck are they going to do that? Right. we get to get to procurement fairly quickly. We realize that we'll likely be making some announcements later this summer around kind of procurement, and of course, those announcements will include some information about how to get involved if you're considered a subcontractor. In the meantime, a couple of things that that we're doing. We are building out kind of a diversity and inclusion council that will focus both on minority and kind of women-owned inclusion, as well as how do we make sure that we are engaging our local partners in Salem County. So look out for that. There'll be some announcements in the coming month. One, and then two, if you go to our website, nj.gov/Windport, and you go to the comments section or the contact us section, you can enter your information in. That's by far the best way to just raise your hand and say, I'm interested in learning more, whether that is to get information about upcoming procurement opportunities or to get involved as a minority or women-owned business. That's the place to register your interest. And that's, again, nj.gov/Windport.
Terrific. Thanks, Brian. I know we have promoted the New Jersey offshore wind supply chain registry throughout on our afternoon break. I know we're also working with your team on scheduling a follow-up to the offshore wind supply chain event that we held last December, where I think we had 150 people there. Wish we could someday do that soon. There was another question to Jerry. You had mentioned you were talking about COVID-19 causing, this person was interested in finding out were there any major changes to your strategic plan or your ongoing projects timeline as a result of COVID?
So timelines on construction was impacted a little bit. Our projects were running as a result of the executive order, so any public project continued on track. Our 2020-2030 plan, our strategic plan, really wasn't impacted. It was impacted in the sense that we know we have to focus on the advanced manufacturing, the IT, data, and other types of technology. It certainly has, for us in Cumberland, brought out our deficiencies and made us more aware of the things that we have to do. Food is a big contributor for us, food manufacturing. So certainly that's going to continue and grow. But now we have to marry the workforce with the advancements that are going to happen in our food industry, which certainly are going to be expedited as a result of folks making sure that they're prepared for any other epidemics or issues, workforce issues that come down the road.
Terrific. Thanks, Jerry. Lauren, thoughts on some of the buzz about the Agricultural Innovation Center that some of us have been hearing about?
Sure. Thanks for asking. So we've been working to bring technology, and we kind of, as we were working on, drone development and unmanned air systems development with our tech park, working with Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University and Atlantic Cape Community College on their drone programs. We started to learn that in the agricultural industry, there's an application for technology and technology growth here in South Jersey. And so we've been looking at a particular site in Bunaborough, working with the mayor, Dave Zapparello, on this project, and also working with one of our grant writers that has had a lot of success for us is Triad Associates, Mike Zampino, Stephen Kays. I know Steve when he was the Cumberland County planning director. So we're looking at an opportunity here to bring technology into agriculture. And for example, using drones to do aerial flights to take soil samples and monitor crops, moisture contents, pest control, things of that sort. And, to bring, technology into agriculture and also into the western part of our county, right? There's always been a lot of focus on Atlantic City, the coast, and along the islands. So we've been focused on agriculture, working with Rick Van Rankin from the Rutgers Cooperative Extension, on a project to bring ag tech. And we're probably going to apply to USEDA for a grant to develop the facility. It's in its early stages, but we're excited to show how we can bring technology into the agricultural cluster.
Excellent. Terrific. Thank you. I want to be mindful of people's time. I know we'd say we'd end it at 10:30, and we usually allow Q&A to go a little longer. So again, I want to thank TD Bank and Rob Curley for your partnership on presenting this today's program and for providing the economic update. And to our speakers, it is with your support that we continue to provide interesting and informative content, and it's really of value to our members and our guests. To our planning committee members who started way back in February developing an in-person event, we thank you for helping today to pivot to today's webinar. Thank you for your time and your commitment to putting this event together. Again, a thank you to Tim Gwynn at PCH Technologies for the use of the WebEx platform. As I mentioned at the beginning, there'll be an email to follow that has the links to the recording of today's program and also the download of these slides that you're seeing today. For more information about the SNJDC, you can find us at snjdc.org. And as I mentioned with Brian, our Economic Development Committee is planning a follow-up to our offshore wind supply chain seminar that we hosted back in December, along with EDA and their offshore wind team. So look for that coming up. And then with that, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. We wish you a good health and a speedy economic recovery. Thanks again for joining us this morning. Take care all.
Good job, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you.